It began as a prestigious opportunity, the Galactic Cultural Exchange Program's first visit to Earth. Among the countless intelligent species across the stars, Earth was a curiosity, a primitive and biodiverse world on the outer rim of a lesser spiral arm. It lacked energy-based weaponry, planetary shields, or even interstellar travel. Still, its sapient species, humans, had survived despite technological backwardness. That, alone, intrigued the Federation. The delegation of students chosen for the exchange were the brightest minds of their worlds, elite youth selected for resilience, intellect, and diplomatic potential. Among them was Zyrak, a Xernaxian from a planet where gravity crushed most species and predators reached the size of transport ships. Zyrak stood nearly 10 feet tall, plated in biometallic skin, and carried the calm confidence of someone who had never encountered a threat he couldn't crush. Their arrival on Earth was unceremonious. A human shuttle met them in low orbit and descended over a verdant landscape. To the students, it was quaint. Trees swayed in the wind, clouds drifted lazily overhead. "So fragile," muttered a Krolan who required a carbon-rich exosuit to survive the oxygen-heavy atmosphere. A Sithri noted the unshielded settlements, open roads, unarmored humans walking freely. They catalogued thousands of minor inefficiencies and biological weaknesses. No claws. No venom sacs. No reinforced bone. And still, they thrived. Their human liaison, Dr. Elena Morrow, was a short, aging woman in sun-faded hiking gear. She greeted the delegation with warmth but wasted no time on pomp. "You'll be observing terrestrial biosystems firsthand," she said. "Avoid unnecessary contact with wildlife. Assume nothing is safe just because it's small." The warning was almost insulting to Zyrak. On his homeworld, dangerous lifeforms were massive, behemoths that crushed buildings or spit molten enzymes. Earth's wildlife looked insignificant by comparison. The humans lacked visible defenses, and yet they survived among these tiny things? It seemed unlikely. The tour began in a rainforest. The humidity clung to their gear, and the cacophony of chirping, buzzing, and rustling was endless. Dr. Morrow narrated calmly, pointing out species and their peculiar adaptations. The students' scanners did most of the heavy lifting, mapping DNA signatures, gauging threat levels, cataloging evolutionary patterns. A few insects with primitive stingers and some fast-moving lizards, nothing unusual. They grew bored. That boredom was shattered by a sharp yelp from a Naxalite student who jumped back, pointing frantically at a small, 8-legged creature on a leaf. It was minuscule, barely the length of a digit, legs thin as whiskers, a mottled brown pattern across its thorax. It didn't move aggressively. It simply waited, suspended in stillness. The scanners identified it in seconds: Phoeneutria fera, a Brazilian wandering spider. "Non-lethal," muttered a Krolan, reading the data. "Not a threat." "Incorrect," Dr. Morrow replied without inflection. "One of the most venomous species on this continent. Causes neurogenic shock, convulsions, and cardiac arrest. Fatal in minutes. Especially for humans." Zyrak stepped forward. "Let us test that." Dr. Morrow raised a hand. "Do not touch it." Zyrak ignored her. His physiology was immune to dozens of known toxins. His internal systems could neutralize paralytics, acids, and neurotoxins before they entered circulation. He had survived black hole radiation storms without shelter. A spider bite? Laughable. He extended a gloved digit toward the spider. In a motion too fast to track, it sank its fangs through the polymer mesh and into the organic flesh beneath. Zyrak tensed. For a moment, nothing happened. He looked back at the group, smug. Primitive. Then his pupils dilated. His breath hitched. His arms spasmed and he dropped to one knee. Muscles locked. He convulsed, falling to the forest floor with a crash that startled every bird within 100 meters. Foam spilled from his mouth. His armored skin rippled with tremors. Less than 60 seconds after the bite, his vitals flatlined. The silence was absolute. The students stared, scanning, rescanning, questioning the data. A Krolund tried reviving him with defibrillators. Nothing. The strongest of them, built to withstand planetary disasters, had been ended by a creature smaller than a mouthpiece. Dr. Morrow spoke quietly. Now do you understand why we don't touch the small things here? No one answered. The human didn't gloat. She simply turned and continued walking, as if this outcome had been entirely predictable. Behind her, none of the alien students moved. The body was recovered within minutes, but the shock lingered much longer. Zyrax's death defied every predictive model the delegation had relied on. Dozens of alien species had encountered toxins before, but none had expected lethality from something so small, so unassuming. The delegation returned to their mobile base in silence. Zyrax's remains were sealed in a stasis pod. Autopsy protocols were initiated by the medical AI, and within 20 minutes, the preliminary data was available. The venom acted with surgical precision. It bypassed muscular resistance, overrode synaptic inhibitors, and forced continuous neural firing until systems collapsed. Heart failure occurred after less than 90 seconds of exposure. What disturbed them more was the realization that Zyrax's physiology, designed to neutralize biotoxins across multiple spectral ranges, had provided no resistance. The venom didn't just kill him, it dismantled him. Every student began reevaluating their assumptions about Earth. The death wasn't viewed as an accident, it was a data point, conclusive, undeniable. A small organism had neutralized the strongest biological defense among them without effort. Some began questioning whether their protective gear was sufficient. One student quietly submitted a request for early extraction. It was denied. Dr. Morrow offered no apology. Instead, she gave them data. Charts. Case studies. Medical reports. She explained that, historically, humans encountered hundreds of venomous species, from snakes and spiders to snails and fish. Children were taught to recognize dangerous patterns, colorful bands, certain movement rhythms, shapes. Survival, she explained, wasn't optional here. It was learned instinct. The next morning, a security protocol was initiated. Every student's biosuit was modified with local neurotoxin filters and direct-inject antivenom kits calibrated to region-specific threats. The suits now displayed not just atmospheric levels but also proximity to aggressive fauna under a half-kilogram in weight. During a debrief, the Krolund biologist attempted to rationalize the event. Such a toxin must be an evolutionary outlier. A freak. Dr. Morrow looked at him, unimpressed. He encountered one spider. You think that was the exception? A new field assignment followed. Data collection in a marshland biome. The suits remained sealed. Not a single student deviated from the designated path. Every shadow, every twitch in the grass triggered instinctive flinches. At one point, an insect the size of a fingernail landed on a Cytheree's visor. He screamed until it flew away. Further analysis showed the spider from the previous day wasn't unique in lethality. Earth had hundreds of such species. Cone snails that delivered fatal stings with beautiful shells. Stonefish that blended seamlessly with the ocean floor, capable of ending life with a step. Scorpions whose stings caused organ failure, ants whose venom simulated the sensation of being burned alive. And it wasn't just venom. Bacteria. Fungi. Microscopic parasites. Earth's biosphere waged war on everything, at every scale. The students came to understand that death here didn't roar or charge, it waited quietly. The margin for error was microscopic. They reviewed incident logs from human history. Entire families poisoned by mushrooms mistaken for food. Swimmers paralyzed by jellyfish invisible in water. Hunters bitten by snakes concealed under leaves. Even trained professionals fell prey. One report described a scientist who died in under 3 minutes after a blue-ringed octopus sting. It fit inside a teacup. Some of the students began exhibiting stress symptoms. Elevated heart rates. Minor tremors. Refusal to sleep outside the core vehicle. The delegation's psychologists logged growing anxiety but noted it was not irrational, it was adaptive. They were afraid because they should be. The Cytherea requested clarification during a briefing. Why do humans tolerate such a planet? Why haven't you sterilized these threats? Dr. Morrow responded plainly. Because we live with them. You learn. You adapt. Or you die. That answer stayed with him. No bravado. No dramatics. Just an explanation grounded in fact. Earth didn't offer control. It demanded respect. By the end of the second week, all remaining students had witnessed at least one potentially lethal encounter: a misstep near a wasp nest, a scorpion crawling into a tent, a tick carrying a neurological virus. None died, but they came close. They no longer doubted Earth's danger. They feared it. They had come expecting to observe primitive life. What they found instead was a planet where survival wasn't about dominance or superiority. It was about constant vigilance. And the knowledge that anything, at any moment, might kill you, even if it fit in the palm of your hand. The third phase of the program shifted from observation to comparative analysis. The students were instructed to gather data on Earth's micropredators and contrast them with native threats from their own worlds. At first, the term micropredator felt like a contradiction. But Earth had redefined the scale of danger. A comprehensive catalog began to form. The irukandji, a jellyfish smaller than a thumbnail, carried venom so potent it induced a syndrome characterized by extreme hypertension, muscular pain, and a lingering sense of doom. No larger than a coin, it forced entire coastal regions to post medical warnings. Even with treatment, survivors often reported months of trauma. One alien student read the physiological data and quietly deleted his underwater field assignment. Then came the bullet ant, native to South American forests. No venom, no paralysis, only pain. Excruciating, all-consuming pain, lasting for up to 24 hours. Local tribes used them in rituals. Human children were made to endure dozens of stings as part of initiation rites. Aliens stared at those reports in silence. One Krolon muttered, "We would never do this to our young." No one disagreed. The blue-ringed octopus appeared elegant under magnification, smooth skin, vivid patterns, almost ornamental. Harmless in appearance, it carried tetrodotoxin, a substance with no known antidote that shut down respiratory functions in under 10 minutes. It did not inject, it merely needed to nip. A graze. A mistake. A moment. The analysis continued. Cone snails, capable of launching a harpoon-like tooth into prey. Stonefish that delivered venom through dorsal spines. Flamboyant colors in Earth's wildlife often meant danger. But not always. Camouflage was equally lethal. Some spiders mimicked twigs. Some ants resembled aggressive species to avoid being eaten, or to infiltrate other colonies. Evolution here didn't produce superiority. It produced deception. The aliens' own reference points felt inadequate. Xernaxian apex predators roared, radiated heat, or released sound waves that shattered bones. Earth's most dangerous creatures required no sound, no spectacle. Their power was quiet, subtle, invisible until it was too late. What disturbed the delegation most wasn't that these creatures existed, but that humans lived among them. Forests weren't off limits. Beaches weren't abandoned. Rural areas teemed with insects and reptiles, and yet humans farmed, explored, vacationed. Their culture didn't exterminate threats. It adapted to them. Venomous creatures were categorized, studied, sometimes even kept as pets. One student discovered a social media account devoted entirely to handling dangerous spiders, with bare hands. Medical data showed recurring incidents across centuries: bites, stings, near deaths. Yet human settlements expanded. Antivenoms were developed. Emergency protocols standardized. People weren't running from these dangers. They were preparing to coexist. That realization introduced a new discomfort. Not only did humans survive on a planet full of weapons in biological form, they did so with such normalcy that death from venom was just another line on a medical chart. In one case, a child survived a black widow bite with only 2 nights in the hospital and a course of antibiotics. To the aliens, Earth seemed unforgiving. But to its natives it was home. Curiosity turned into respect. Fear turned into fascination. How did a species lacking natural armor, claws, or venom itself become dominant? The answer slowly became clear. Humans didn't just endure Earth, they evolved with it. Their immune systems, reflexes, instincts, everything had been shaped by constant exposure to danger. When comparing evolutionary pathways, alien students noticed something striking. On most of their worlds, apex predators eliminated smaller threats over time. Domination led to ecological stability. On Earth, apex predators existed alongside threats, not above them. A lion could still die from a snake bite. A bear could succumb to disease. No creature here was immune to the planet's chaotic ecosystem. Earth didn't reward strength. It punished complacency. Eventually, one student hypothesized that this persistent threat landscape was why humans developed tools, medicine, and knowledge systems so rapidly. Intelligence wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. On a planet where anything could kill you silently, progress was the only shield. The students uploaded their findings. Federation Biohazard Systems flagged 23 Earth species for immediate classification under Class 4 planetary threats. That was the level typically reserved for parasitic hives or chemical warfare plants on other worlds. But none of Earth's species used advanced technology. They didn't need it. Nature had already done the work. The Federation issued an interim report based on the data gathered so far. The summary was blunt. Earth posed an unpredictable threat profile, especially due to its biological density and diversity. While not hostile in intent, the planet's ecosystem operated on principles incompatible with conventional risk models. For the first time, a Class 8 biodiversity exception was issued for a non-spacefaring world. It included recommendations: no unarmored landing, no extended exposure without local ecological guidance, and most surprisingly, immediate review of human cognitive threat classification. The delegation received this report in the middle of their 4th week on Earth. The tone of the group had changed. Gone were the casual observations and confident remarks. What remained was intense focus and a growing recognition that humans were not anomalies. They were products of a system that demanded unrelenting adaptation. Earth didn't produce dominant life forms by strength, but by endurance. Human neural patterns became the next subject of study. The delegation's neurocognitive analysts began comparing human reaction times, pain thresholds, and fear responses to those of other sapient species. The results were consistently disturbing. Humans reacted to danger faster than most species twice their size. They displayed a peculiar resistance to fear conditioning, able to confront, study, and even approach deadly creatures without paralyzing hesitation. The death of one of their own didn't halt them. It taught them. They processed trauma through learning. Psychological resilience rates were anomalously high. Unlike most sapient species, humans displayed post-traumatic growth, not just recovery. One alien noted, "They get stronger when something tries to kill them." Further data revealed a widespread culture of hazard interaction. Nature documentaries, extreme survival shows, venom extraction laboratories, these weren't fringe activities. Children were taught the basics of identifying threats. Adults voluntarily handled venomous snakes under supervision. A database of bite reports had been maintained for decades, tracking symptoms, outcomes, and long-term complications. Even their emergency medicine infrastructure had adapted. Antivenoms were produced at scale for multiple species. Mobile extraction kits, epinephrine pens, anti-shock meds. Humans had normalized surviving encounters that would be fatal on most other planets. What others treated as catastrophic, they treated as inconvenience, if managed correctly. What deeply unsettled the delegation wasn't the existence of dangerous fauna. It was the normalization of those dangers. Earth's inhabitants knew they lived surrounded by lethal organisms and still carried on with routine, often treating such risks as background noise. This implied a psychological framework evolved not just to avoid danger, but to incorporate it. More analysis followed. Combat training incorporated wildlife survival. Emergency drills in schools included responses to animal attacks and insect bites. Entire segments of the internet were devoted to wilderness survival, bushcraft, and identifying edible versus poisonous flora. This level of preparedness wasn't fear-based, it was habitual. Delegation members, under constant supervision, were taken to controlled wildlife centers. There, they witnessed handlers calmly extracting venom from snakes that could kill in minutes. Not from behind force fields or robotic arms, but with bare hands and practiced technique. The handlers weren't reckless. They were precise, calm, focused. The danger was real, they simply treated it as manageable. At night, some of the students debated this behavior. Why would a species embrace such peril? The Cythereys enologists proposed a hypothesis: Earth's danger wasn't incidental. It was integral. Living here shaped intelligence to value foresight, reaction speed, and emotional regulation. This ecosystem didn't just test strength, it demanded psychological and biological balance. Survive, adapt, predict, or die. Humans hadn't tamed the planet. They'd come to terms with it. Over time, the delegation stopped referring to Earth's creatures as primitive. They stopped using low tier for animals without visible weapons. The new term adopted internally was precision threats, small, efficient organisms that executed lethal function with minimal biological investment. These threats were treated with quiet respect. Toward the end of their analysis, one observation became unavoidable. The same evolutionary pressure that produced microscopic killers had also forged humanity. They were shaped by the same rules. Danger was not exceptional. It was constant. Earth had forced humans to build civilization with a dagger at their throat. And they had done it anyway. Departure day arrived without ceremony. The delegation shuttle stood ready, engines humming as cargo modules sealed. The alien students moved with unusual quiet, their posture restrained, eyes sharper than when they first arrived. For weeks on Earth had stripped away arrogance, leaving behind a cautious respect rooted not in admiration, but in hard-earned understanding. Final debriefing transcripts revealed subtle changes in language. Earth was no longer described as undeveloped or low threat. The terminology had shifted. Biological crucible, adaptive nightmare, training ground for the intelligent. A planet whose very soil bred vigilance. The students now understood, surviving Earth wasn't a milestone, it was a skill set. Each species logged separate reports to their homeworlds. The Cythere noted that Earth's smallest predators had no visible malice, yet their lethality rivaled engineered weapons. The Krolon warned that neuro-recalibration was needed when approaching species that evolved under Earth-tier threat conditions. The Zalari focused on how humans incorporated lethal organisms into their daily lives without hesitation. One by one, the analyses reinforced a singular truth: Earth had never been passive. It had tested everything that walked, and only the cautious endured. Psychological evaluations conducted before departure confirmed lasting shifts. Mild hypervigilance had replaced the relaxed confidence seen on arrival. Several students reported phantom sensations, the feeling of something crawling, the imagined brush of wings or webbing. These weren't signs of trauma. They were signs of rewired survival instincts. Earth didn't scar them. It taught them. The incident with Zyrak was no longer considered a failure of protocol. It was the opening lesson. A violent, irreversible introduction to a planet that gave no second chances. What followed, the venom studies, the micropredator analyses, the neural mapping, all served to reinforce one central thesis: Earth didn't care how advanced you were. It only cared how quickly you learned. By the time they lifted off, none of them doubted humanity's place in the galactic structure. They hadn't seen fleets or weapons. They hadn't witnessed military might or interstellar conquests. Yet what they'd encountered was arguably more terrifying: a species that survived the impossible not by avoiding risk, but by confronting it with calculation and calm. The Federation Council received the Consolidated Earth dossier. One subsection, flagged and encrypted, drew particular attention: potential human warfare projection in exobiological theaters. It wasn't based on weapon analysis or fleet sizes. It was based on behavioral modeling, how humans processed new environments, how they responded to danger, how rapidly they adapted when systems failed. Simulations showed disturbing efficiency. Drop a human unit into an unknown biosphere, and within days they'd identify edible resources, categorize threats, and develop countermeasures. Fear would not paralyze them. It would fuel them. Pain would not deter them. It would inform them. Loss would not halt them. It would sharpen them. A recommendation was added to the Council's private index, ** in the event of future conflict, do not attempt biological sabotage against humans. Earth has already done that for millennia. It did not work, **. Even among species bred in sterilized environments, grown in orbital cradles or engineered for perfection, the message was unambiguous: humanity was not fragile. They were refined by adversity. And Earth was the forge. The delegation dispersed to their home systems, but fragments of Earth followed them. Biological samples were stored, analyzed, quarantined. None were cloned. The risk of replication was deemed unacceptable. One microscopic species introduced into a non-Earth ecosystem could collapse an entire food chain or trigger a mutagenic cascade. The cost of curiosity was too high. Plans for future visits were shelved. Not banned, but delayed. The need to reassess planetary classification systems became a new Federation initiative. A planet like Earth could no longer be measured by traditional ecological markers. Its intelligence did not reside solely in its dominant species, it permeated the survival structure of every organism. Death was woven into evolution here. As the final report closed, a single footnote was appended by one of the senior analysts: humanity should not be approached as a threat. But they must never be underestimated. If Earth taught them anything, it's that what doesn't kill them doesn't get a second chance.